Good to be with you. I'm Tony DeCopel. The breaking news right now. Why he did it, what we've learned about the suspect now dead in that attack on a Jewish synagogue and school in Michigan, his family ties to Hezbollah militants in Lebanon, and the wider threat of anti-Semitic violence, what authorities are now warning. Also developing tonight, day 14 of the war with Iran, and the U.S. death toll rises. The Pentagon confirming the loss of 6 crew aboard that refueling plane killed while supporting Operation Epic Fury, as Marines and more American warships head toward the region. What President Trump is saying. And the war hits home for Americans at the pump. Nearly 2 weeks of gas price hikes, one family's hard choices tonight.
How does that affect your budget?
It affects it a lot.
The blizzard threat in the Midwest, plus severe thunderstorms elsewhere. What it means for your weekend. And mass times speed equals flight.
Took the curve, 1050.
What happened when she landed? Also, Steve Hartman on the road with Night going national.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Tony DeCopel.
Good evening. American and Israeli weapons have hammered more than 15,000 targets inside Iran. That is the latest count from the Pentagon, tallying what is a massive and ongoing U.S. and Israeli air campaign. But 2 attacks back here at home have authorities on alert and everyday Americans worrying about what might be targeted next. In a moment, we'll have more on the man who opened fire on a classroom of ROTC cadets in Virginia, how he allegedly got a gun despite a past felony conviction for supporting the ISIS terror group. But we're going to begin in Michigan, where we've learned that the man who rammed a truck packed with explosives into a school has family ties to Hezbollah, that Iran-backed militant group in Lebanon. We have 2 reports from Michigan this evening. We're going to begin with CBS News correspondent Jonah Kaplan outside Temple, Israel in West Bloomfield. Jonah, good evening.
Tony, good evening. Temple, Israel, it's one of the biggest synagogues in America, and it's not just a house of worship. There's also a preschool, a kindergarten. Tonight, all the congregants, the members, the staff, the clergy, the students, the teachers, everyone's safe physically. But this attack has left the community feeling both rattled and resilient. Investigators are still sifting through the damage and collecting evidence from Thursday's attack on Temple, Israel. Staff member Cassie Cohen was working inside when a truck packed with explosive materials rammed into the building.
I can't get out of my mind the sound of the car crashing and then the gunfire.
On Friday, federal agents raided the Dearborn Heights home of 41-year-old Ayman Mohammed Ghazali, a Lebanese-born American citizen identified by investigators as the suspect. The FBI now reporting Ghazali exchanged gunfire with Temple security, but he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. This is a physical building, but I imagine this hits your emotional, your spiritual core.
Yeah, this is my spiritual home. You know, my kids belong here.
Officers stormed the building as it burned to help evacuate more than 100 students and staff. Some of those officers were treated for smoke inhalation. Clergy members are grateful no one was seriously hurt, but Rabbi Jen Lader says this community is now grappling with an endless amount of emotional wounds.
None of us signed up for this. This was not the feeling in America when we became rabbis.
Just 2 months ago, the FBI's Detroit office led an active shooter response training for Temple Israel staff and clergy. Many here crediting that training for saving lives. What is the message to Jewish institutions and other houses of worship around the country?
Thanks to these protocols and these safety procedures and the strength and bravery of our people, this is not a different story.
And while this is still an active crime scene, Tony, it still is the Sabbath here at sundown, and Temple Israel, it's holding services tonight for Shabbat, and tomorrow there's even a bar mitzvah that's going to be celebrated, but at a different location. Meanwhile, security at this synagogue and all others, it's not free. The Jewish Federations of North America estimate the cost to secure Jewish life in America is about $750 million every year.
You mentioned that resilience. Let's linger on that. Jonah Kaplan, thank you very much. We turn now to what we know about the man behind that attack just described, who he was, how he came to America. Let's bring in Usher Qureshi. Good evening, Usher.
Good evening, Tony. Well, CBS News is learning more about Ayman Mohammed Ghazali tonight. Overnight, federal agents raided his home behind me. Just 2 days before the synagogue attack, Ghazali, seen here on this security video, bought more than $2,000 worth of fireworks. Tonight, the FBI confirmed that fireworks were found in the truck. Ghazali was born in Lebanon and entered the U.S. legally in 2011 on a spousal visa, becoming a U.S. citizen 5 years later. He lived alone in Dearborn Heights, just down the block from his job at this restaurant. Now, on March 5th, family members, including Ghazali's 2 brothers, niece, and nephew, were killed when an Israeli drone attack struck their village in Lebanon, leaving him distraught, according to community members. A local journalist in Lebanon spoke to villagers who claimed Ghazali's brothers were members of Hezbollah's rocket unit, but would not provide their names. Now, Dearborn Heights Mayor Mo Beydoun said this afternoon that while Ghazali recently suffered a tragedy, there is no excuse for violence. He also pledged support for the local Jewish community. Tony?
Usher, thank you very much. We're going to turn now to what happened in Virginia yesterday. The new information coming in on the man with prior ties to ISIS who opened fire on an ROTC class at Old Dominion University. The instructor he killed as well, a former combat helicopter pilot, and the cadets who prevented an even wider tragedy. Here's Justice correspondent Scott McFarland.
Yeah, Tony, police are investigating it as an act of terror and not the first attempt by Mohammed J-Lo of Virginia. He'd been released from prison in 2024 after serving 8 years for trying to donate money to ISIS and for plotting a terror attack. Investigators say J-Lo's gun had an obliterated serial number, complicating their tracing of the gun. Late today, the Department of Justice charged a man suspected of selling that gun to J-Lo, despite J-Lo's felony conviction. He's a former Army National Guardsman. He killed the instructor of the ROTC class at Old Dominion University, Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw, who was an Army pilot who flew helicopters over Iraq and over Afghanistan, and who left behind a spouse and a child. 2 others were injured in the attack, and CBS News has learned at least one of the students in the class stopped J-Lo and killed him with a knife. He was let out early of his federal prison term after completing a drug treatment program in 2024, Tony.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. Another big story in Washington, a federal judge has blocked a part of the Justice Department's probe into Fed Chair Jerome Powell, ruling that it could not force officials at the Fed to cooperate. President Trump has had a long-running feud with Powell, but in January, the Justice Department launched a criminal investigation into him, with the president alleging that a $2.5 billion renovation was so over budget as to be suspicious. The judge today said he's seen no evidence of a crime. The administration, meanwhile, is appealing.
He has neutered the grand jury's ability to investigate crime. This is wrong, and it is without legal authority.
Powell's term ends in May. Turn now to the war with Iran. Tonight, we've learned that all 6 crew members died on that refueling plane that crashed in Iraq, bringing the U.S. death toll to 13 in Operation Epic Fury. As the war's major focus turns now to Iran's efforts to disrupt the world's oil supply. Chief Correspondent Matt Gutman has it all from the Middle East.
With tankers on fire and ships dead in the water, today, Secretary Pete Hegseth tried to project that the U.S. was in control of the Strait of Hormuz.
They are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. It's something we're dealing with. We have been dealing with it, and don't need to worry about it.
CBS News has learned the Pentagon is sending more warships and up to 5,000 sailors and Marines to the Middle East as hundreds of tankers remain stuck, terrorized by Iranian attacks. The Trump administration says opening the strait is a top priority to keep the global oil supply moving. General Clinton Hinote studied what it would take to do just that.
Why is it so difficult to, quote unquote, open the Strait of Hormuz?
It's such a narrow waterway. And because they know where you're going to be, they can plan out their attacks. Say 8 times we get tankers through and 2 times we don't. Well, no company out there is going to take that risk.
The Pentagon says the pace of Iran's missile and drone attacks has decreased by over 90%. But Iran has attacked at least 16 ships in the Persian Gulf since the war began. Earlier this week, that Thai-flagged tanker was hit by a suspected missile. The Thai Navy says 3 crew members are still trapped on board, but it's too dangerous to rescue them.
What are the options that the U.S. currently has in terms of getting ships through there?
You're going to need to control the bank, the Iranian coastline. And if you do that, you're almost certainly going to need ground troops.
And Tony, that additional amphibious force being sent to the region also includes a contingent of Marines who are trained to land on shore and control territory. But General High Note tells me that the least painful outcome for all sides would be a negotiated settlement. Tony.
Matt, thank you very much. With a key source of the world's oil supply choked off by Iran, oil prices are up more than 40% since the start of the war. Here in the U.S., that has pushed gas prices up more than 60 cents a gallon over the very same time period. And families feeling the most shock in this are the more than 30 million American households living paycheck to paycheck. CBS News correspondent Elaine Quijano has one family's story.
When Kelly Sudavangsi hits the road, she knows just how much it costs to fill up her Toyota Corolla.
It's around $25 to $30.
How much does it cost now to fill your tank?
I would say around $50.
How does that affect your budget?
It affects it a lot.
The mother of three earns about $18 an hour as a senior caregiver near Los Angeles and drives 3 hours round trip to work. She worries if prices keep rising,
we can't afford to do the commute for work. We would have to quit the job.
She and her husband had been saving up for a family spring break road trip to Las Vegas and the Grand Canyon. But now
we canceled it. With gas being that high, I can't do the extra $200-300 that it's going to cost.
What is this like for you?
I'm depressed. I promised my kids stuff, and I hardly ever break my promises. This time around, I have to. It breaks my heart. That extra $200-300 and I can't do it.
California already has one of the highest gas taxes in the country. And in the past month, the average price for regular gas jumped about 19%, more than 80 cents a gallon. Nationwide, prices are up too. Regular gas increased 23%, or about 70 cents on average over the same period. The disappointment hit Sudavangsi's kids hard.
I was like, oh man.
But I was very excited.
Gas prices are, well, high. I mean, we could just go to grandma's house. It's not really that far.
Sudavangsi, who voted for President Trump, blames the war in Iran for higher gas costs.
I believe in our president, okay? It's great that he wants to help another country, but it's not great when your homeland, your people, is having to suffer.
Adding to the cost, this time of year, gas stations tend to switch from winter blend gasoline to the more expensive summer blend. Tony?
Elaine, thank you very much. A major update tonight in the case of the teenagers who accidentally ran over their high school math teacher. This happened after the teens had toilet papered the teacher's home as part of a senior prank, a prank that the teacher, Jason Hughes, was in on. When he ran out after them, he fell and was hit. But Hughes' widow had asked for all charges to be dropped, hoping to prevent what she called a separate tragedy of ruined young lives. And today, prosecutors in Gainesville, Georgia, agreed. Now to the weather. We are heading into the last weekend of winter, and a coast-to-coast storm is on the march. Lonnie Quinn tracking it all. Good evening, Lonnie.
You know, Tony, believe it or not, that coast-to-coast storm has its origins in Hawaii right now. They're dealing with their own rough weather. If you look at the maps, the jet stream will pick that energy up, pull it into the Pacific Northwest, and make it go from west coast to east coast. Look at almost every sort of warning or watch you can think of throughout the weekend. Blizzard warnings, high wind warnings. There's two storms. One exits the east coast on Saturday, but that second storm moves into the Midwest on Sunday. So places like Green Bay into the UP of Michigan, you could have blizzard conditions, 1, 2, 3 feet of snow. South of it, anywhere from Shreveport into portions of Indiana, like around Louisville. I mean, you could be dealing with tornadoes out there. By the time you get to Monday, the East Coast is covered with rain. Top to bottom, it's a bad Monday out there, particularly Charleston to Washington, D.C. That's where you could have severe weather. It exits on Tuesday, but it's significantly colder behind that front. If we can come back here live, here in New York City, all right, on Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day, we typically have a reading of around 50 degrees, and that wind is kicking in. Tony, it's going to be cold St. Patrick's Day. We'll be getting ready for the parade. It's around freezing in the city itself for the biggest St. Patrick's Day parade anywhere in the country. Going to be a cold one this year.
No one's going to feel it, and you know exactly why, Lonnie. Thank you very much. Still ahead on the broadcast tonight, the age of the flying car has not yet arrived, but this happened. We'll explain. And later, Steve Hartman on the road with the ultimate sports fan and what he means to his neighbors. After spending most of last week in the Middle East, a region at war since before America was even born, I was really excited to get home because we are living a miracle here. A country of 330 million people from everywhere somehow formed into one of the most tolerant and flourishing societies the world has ever known. But this time it felt like the war had followed me home. The day I got back, two young men, said to be inspired by ISIS, tossed homemade bombs into a crowd of cops and protesters, hoping for carnage. A few days later, another man opened fire on a classroom of ROTC cadets, murdering their instructor. And just after that, another man, this one, driving a truck full of explosives, rammed his way through the entrance of a synagogue full of children at school. What unites these cases, authorities say, is that terrorism was the goal. And if not for extraordinary acts of heroism, the cops here in New York, the quick-thinking ROTC cadets in Virginia, the private security guard in Michigan, we right now would be a very different country. Not on alert, as the headlines say, but utterly changed. Mourning the death of police, of college kids, of an entire building of children and their teachers. This week, with a little luck as well, the protections we have in place worked. The question for us now, as we consider what could have been, is whether we and our leaders are truly prepared for when the protections don't work. We'll be right back. Most drivers pull gently to the side of the road when they see police in the rearview mirror. This woman in Wisconsin didn't do that, hitting 96 miles an hour before losing control Wednesday, careening into a ditch and liftoff. Police smashed a window to save the driver and the 20-year-old passenger. Both were already on probation. And you would think it's difficult to keep a crime a secret with this many co-conspirators. You're looking at a jewelry heist last year in Fremont, California. The video just released by the Justice Department. 24 bandits took part, making off with $1.7 million, but in nearly 9 months, only 4 arrests. None of those guys are talking. Up next, Steve Hartman on the road with a small-town celebrity named Dave the Rave.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb.
Another day in America. I'm Tony DeCopel. Good night.